You've probably been told to plan out your career, right? Like, have a 10-year roadmap all figured out. Well, in a world that changes as fast as ours does, that advice is, let's just say it's dangerously out of date. Today, we're going to dive into a totally different way of thinking. It's all about how you can build a resilient career, not by trying to predict the future, but by actually getting in there and creating.
Okay, so this slide right here, it gets to the very heart of everything we're talking about. You're looking at two totally different ways to see the world. On the one hand, you've got this rigid, predictable maze, and on the other, a much more, well, chaotic and tangled reality. And this isn't just a cool graphic. It represents two fundamental logics for how we create things. And trust me, understanding the difference between them is the absolute key to not just surviving, but actually thriving when things get uncertain.
So for decades, pretty much all of us have been taught to think about our careers, and business for that matter, using one main approach. It's a logic that's built on a huge assumption that the world is a knowable, predictable place. We're going to call this the Jigsaw Puzzle Myth.
Yeah, I bet this looks pretty familiar, right? This is what we call causal logic. You start with a big, clear goal. That's the picture on the puzzle box. Then you do all the standard stuff. You define your market, you segment it, you target it, and you go find that perfect customer. It is all about prediction. The core belief here is simple. If I can just predict the future, I can control it. And you know what? It feels safe. It feels structured. It's exactly how most of us were taught to think.
But, and this is a big but, here's the problem. The real world, it's not a jigsaw puzzle. Not even close. This whole causal model just completely falls apart when the future is fundamentally unknowable. The puzzle pieces, they don't even exist yet. And that picture on the box, it's pure fiction. You can't have a map for a world like this because no map is even possible. And look, this isn't just a vague feeling of being overwhelmed. There are actual names for this stuff. We're talking about Knightian uncertainty, which is a fancy way of saying we don't even know what all the possible outcomes are. Then there's goal ambiguity, which means, hey, we and our customers often don't even know what we really want. And finally, isotropy, which means it's impossible to tell which of the million signals flying at us every day is the one we should actually pay attention to. Trying to predict anything in that environment, it's a losing game.
So if the world isn't a puzzle, then what is it? And, probably the most important question, how in the world are we supposed to operate in it? Well, it turns out that expert entrepreneurs and creators, they use a completely different logic. They don't see the world as a puzzle that needs solving. They see it as a quilt that needs weaving.
And here is that alternative. It's called effectuation. Now look closely at the flow here. It's completely flipped. It doesn't start with some grand market definition. Nope. It starts with you. It starts with your means, who you are, what you know, and who you know. And from that starting point, you take action. You find partners, and together you literally co-create one of several possible futures. See the difference? This is a logic of control, not prediction. And that's the key. To the extent you can control the future, you don't need to predict it.
This entire way of thinking is built on 5 core principles. Think of it as your new toolkit for taking action. First, the bird in hand principle. You just start with what you've got. Second, affordable loss. You only risk what you can actually afford to lose. Third, the crazy quilt principle. You build a network of partners who are committed to building something with you. Fourth, the lemonade principle. When surprises pop up, you leverage them as opportunities. And finally, and this is the big one, the pilot in the plane principle. You realize that you are in the driver's seat, actively shaping what happens next.
Okay, so you might be thinking this all sounds great as a theory, but how does this abstract logic actually turn into a real career? One with actual longevity? Well, that's exactly where the discipline of modern service design comes in. It's what takes all this theory and turns it into an incredibly valuable, practical skill set.
Service design itself has had quite an evolution. It started out as version 1.0, really just focused on single things, single artifacts. Then it grew into version 2.0, which was all about mapping out that whole linear customer journey. But today, in this incredibly complex AI-driven world we live in, we are now in Service Design 3.0. And this is a whole new ballgame. We're not just mapping a straight line anymore. We're talking about orchestrating this huge dynamic ecosystem of both humans and technology.
And this is what that ecosystem looks like. It's vibrant, it's interconnected, it's alive. And in this world, the designer isn't some master builder working off a rigid blueprint. Not at all. The designer is more like a gardener, someone who cultivates the right conditions for things to grow. They're nurturing the connections between people and data and algorithms, which allows the whole system to flourish and adapt on its own. This, right here, is systems thinking in action.
I love this quote because it just absolutely nails the shift in mindset. You're moving away from the ego of being the lone master builder and toward the wisdom of being a steward. A service designer's job, at its core, is to see all the different resources in the ecosystem and then help them connect in new ways that create value for everyone involved.
So what's at the very heart of this new approach? I'd argue it's the single most important challenge of our time, figuring out how to design the strategic partnership between human intelligence and artificial intelligence. And let's be clear, this is not about one replacing the other. It's about creating a really sophisticated dance.
Remember that legendary Go match between AlphaGo and Lee Sedol? It's actually the perfect metaphor for this. You had move 37, which was the AI's move. People called it alien. It was so brilliant. That's the power of AI, right? Optimization on a scale we literally can't comprehend. But then you had move 78. That was Lee Sedol's God's touch, this deeply creative, intuitive move that just completely broke the AI's logic. That's our human intuition, our moral judgment. The job of a service designer today is to build systems where both of those moves are possible.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. Gardener, dance, this all sounds a bit vague, maybe a little too touchy-feely and artistic. But I'm telling you, that cannot be further from the truth. This is an incredibly rigorous, data-driven, and highly strategic discipline.
Let me show you exactly how service design students are trained to think about this. It is never just about using AI. No way. It's about strategically defining what the AI is great at, the baseline stuff, like transcription, data generation, and then, crucially, defining where we humans need to step in to elevate that work. We're the ones who add nuance, context, strategy, and correct the machine when it messes up. This clear division of labor is what makes a system truly robust.
So let's be really clear here. Service design is not the path of the starving artist. It is the path of the strategic creative. It gives you a toolkit that is desperately needed in our most critical sectors. We're talking tech, healthcare, government, you name it. And this is what makes you indispensable. It's because you learn how to solve the messy, complicated, human-centered problems that pure engineering or data science on their own simply can't touch.
And all of this brings us to the final and I think most important takeaway. In an economy that is being completely reshaped by AI, the skills you learn as a service designer, the ability to think in systems, to orchestrate this dance of agency, to apply creativity strategically, these are not soft skills anymore. Let me repeat that. They are not soft skills. They are your single greatest competitive advantage. And this brings us right back to that pilot and the plane principle we talked about. Look, in education and service design isn't going to give you a crystal ball to predict the job market of 2035. What it does give you are the skills to be a co-pilot, to be someone who is actively building the future you want to work in, no matter what crazy surprises come along. You learn how to control your little corner of the world instead of just constantly reacting to whatever it throws at you.
So I'll leave you with this question to think about. As you look at your own future, or maybe the future of your kids, in a world that you know, deep down, resists prediction, what really makes more sense? Trying to build a perfect static map to a destination that might not even exist by the time you get there? Or learning how to fly?